Hey friends, welcome to Embracing Your Season. I'm your host, Paige Cligenpeel. Thank you so much for joining me today. We want to hear from you. If you have any feedback or guests that you might want on the show, please send me a message at paigeclingenpeel@gmail.com. Today, we have a very special guest. In fact, we have two very special guests. It is Paul and Jeanette Savage. They are coming from Colorado. They wrote an amazing book called Blended, Navigating the Challenges and Joys of a Step Family. For me personally, I came from a blended family, so I love some of the information that they talked about today. In fact, after the show, I'm going to share a little bit of my takeaways that I hope will encourage you and equip you and strengthen your families if maybe this is a season that you're navigating in your own home. This episode you definitely don't want to miss, so thanks for joining me. Again, let's get going with my conversation with Paul and Jeanette Savage on this episode of Embracing Your Season. Paul and Jeanette, I am so excited that you were joining me in this conversation today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's just dive right in. You guys wrote an amazing book, which I think I see behind you. It is called Blended. Can you tell us a little bit more about what led you guys to write this book that could be so impactful for the people who read it?
Yeah, we were Paige. We were on a cruise about 5 years ago, Jeanette and I. And we were. I still remember exactly where we were sitting. We were out on a not on the balcony, or like in a sitting area, and just sitting there going, we should write a book about our family, about our blended family. And I think we've done a pretty good job doing it, putting it all together. And that was about 5 years ago. And that's when the process started. And we actually wrote out the chapters of the book, and those are the chapters that we have in our book. Outside of one were the actual chapters that we came up with while we were on the cruise. So it's pretty amazing, and it's been we've really worked pretty diligently for about 2 years. It's been a long process, but it's been out now for about 2 months, and it's pretty exciting. What's going on with it. So.
I was just going to say, you hear it here first, that if you want to write a book, you need to go on the cruise, right? Yeah. So that's what you guys are advocating.
Highly recommend. Yes, highly recommend that. Yeah, I think too, blending families isn't easy. And, we have met people along our journey that have really struggled too. And so I think looking back, as we were talking about it and talking about writing the book, about the things that we did right and the things that we could have done better. And I think it's really wanting to share that with people who are going through the same process and the same struggles that maybe we had. And so that's kind of, our conversation kind of went through, talking about those things when coming up with what would we say in a book, what would we talk about? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I actually came from a blended family. So my parents divorced when I was around 16, I think. And then my mom remarried when I was 17. So the divorce that happened between my parents was actually probably the healthier of the two things that could have happened. The marriage was just not great, and it was kind of toxic. And then when my mom remarried, we were kind of hopeful that we would be able to just have this great family that just blends together. Obviously, in some cases, and in my own, that didn't work exactly the way we all thought. I was going to get another sibling. I was going to have this great guy and father figure in my life. It was not easy, friends. And so when you said you could have done things better, I would love to hear, what was that like when you first started having those conversations about blending, and how did that work with your kids, and how did they respond?
Wow. Well, we have a famous thing we talk about in our book, the famous first get together. So Jeanette and I dated for a little while, and our kids didn't know each other. They knew we were dating somebody, but they didn't know who it was. Well, then we brought everybody together. It was a bowling experience. We took everybody bowling. It was one of the most awkward events. Literally, my kids sat on one side of the bowling alley, like over like this, and then Jeanette's kids sat over here, and then Jeanette and I sort of talked to each other, and our kids just stared at each other.
What were the ages at that time?
So my three kids at the time would have been 10, 15, and 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Same ages.
And mine were
Yeah.
11 and
16.
16.
Yeah.
11
Oh
and
my
16.
goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wow.
it was so awkward, and it was interesting. We talk about in the book where I was touching Jeanette's back like this, and Danny, the youngest, is Danielle. We call her Danny, and Danny is like if she was burning laser beams in me. She was where it was not good.
I think
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
too, looking back, Paul's girls were much more on board with him dating than my kids were. And I think, well, I know that they didn't have enough time. So for me, in my first marriage, it was really a process of about 4 years before I actually filed for divorce. I contemplated it, and and in that process, I really wanted to work through everything I needed to do to save my marriage, and so it was about 4 years. So I was at that point ready to move on, and my kids not so much. Like, I shared, we were separated for about 9 months, I guess, before I actually filed for divorce. So they knew that there was trouble, and that it may not work out, especially my older kids. But the youngest, she pretty much was clueless. Like, she thought that, her parents would get back together and it'd all be fine. Well, then once I filed for divorce and they knew that, and I decided, I really didn't have any intentions of getting married again. I just thought, I just wanted somebody to date, to like hang out with when my kids were with their dad. And so that's a little backstory why my kids were a little bit less friendly, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, the laser beam eyes probably gave it away,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They just, didn't probably, and as we talked, the things we did right and the things we did wrong. One of those things was that I probably should have given them a little more time and space
Okay.
before jumping into a relationship. But, that's not what happened. And here we are, 16 years later.
Yeah, we got married about 14 months after we met, and
Yeah.
so it was
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was a relatively short time period. And now we never lived together. We didn't live together. We didn't. It was a funny story. It was when we moved. We all moved into one house, not Jeanette's home or my home. We got a house and we moved into it. And Danny, the youngest, goes, "Well, where's Paul going to sleep?"
Oh, she didn't understand. Oh,
He didn't
gosh.
understand that Paul was going to be there all the time, and
Yeah.
so it was it just yeah. If we could have done things differently, that's one of the things we talk about, is that we should have waited, and that's what we find with a lot of couples. People that we meet, people that have step families or they're thinking about step families or blending a family, is people move way too quickly, especially because you meet someone as beautiful as this woman right here, and I go, wow, and when you're attracted to them, you want to be with them, and then it becomes romantic, and then then you bring the kids into it, and the kids have nothing to do with that. They don't. That's the relationship between man and woman is not, the kids really don't care about that. And so it's been, that was one of the things we learned, and our kids talk about that too, that they wish they would have known, because one of the things that's unique about our book compared to, just some other books that are out there about step families, our kids have about 70 pages in the book. So our kids have their story in the book, and they talk about their stories, and they talk about, hey, we should have, one of the things is that we did differently is we should have waited, we wish we got to know each other better, maybe.
It's interesting because I can relate to this on two two, I guess, viewpoints as the child and then as an adult. And my mom and I have had conversations now that I'm an adult and I'm married. I've been married 18 years. We have 4 kids and, we work hard at our marriage, ups and downs, sure. But coming from the child perspective, I didn't understand why she married so quickly. Even though I knew the marriage with my father was very unhealthy. She tells me now that it was because she wanted a father figure for myself and my brother, because she didn't have that growing up. And so this expectation that sometimes I think parents have, thinking that they want the best for their kids, actually ends up being something that is hurtful. For instance, like moving too fast and how it doesn't allow us time to navigate some of those things. So I'm glad you addressed that in your book. And I know another thing that you guys talk about too in your book is like therapy. And of course, I'm a therapist, so I'm a huge advocate of going out there and telling a random stranger all your problems that is a paid professional. I should clarify that. Not just a random stranger. Let's say they're paid professional. But tell us a little bit about your experience with therapy.
For me, it was one of the best things I could have ever done for myself. As we share our stories in our book, childhood, growing up. My dad died when I was 2. I had a stepfather who was not a good stepfather, not a good role model. Actually, I was sexually abused by him. And, I had a lot of baggage that I carried around, a trauma, that sort of thing. And I carried that into my first marriage. And I think I got to a place of, I was sinking. And I talk about, I felt like I was in quicksand and I was doing everything I could to keep from going under, from sinking in the sand. Like my head was above water and I was exhausted from just trying to survive. And I knew that I needed help. I just could not navigate what was going on in my life. And so I decided to go to therapy, and really it was life-changing. And, working through the trauma that I had and, how to set boundaries, how to communicate, realizing I was worth more, I was valuable, like all of those things that I never heard before. And so and I think had I not done that, I would have just carried all that baggage that I had from my first marriage into my second marriage. And, thankfully I did not do that. I went to therapy for about 4 years, and I looked forward to going every week that I went, and I would go in with this like clouded view and just like a messed thoughts, like I couldn't sort it all out. And when I would leave my sessions, I would feel like I had a path. It was clear. I knew what I was supposed to do, what direction I was going. And so, for me, it was life-changing, and I highly recommend it. And, I'm a big advocate for that for my kids. And, so that was my journey on therapy.
Yeah. For me, it was, therapy and finding a therapist, that really understood me was so important, because I was a child. I was a boy. I was a boy I could say an adolescent a boy who shaved. I like to say it that way, because that's really what I was. I was a 10-year-old kid in a 35, 40-year-old's body. And that's the way I viewed the world. And therapy really shifted my paradigm, and it shifted, how I viewed the world and how I viewed life. And it, helped me heal from, my family. My parents were married for over 50 years, but, for me, it was no love, affection in my home at all. Growing up, my parents didn't tell me to love me until I was in my 40s. And no physical affection. And so for me, what I did is I went out and sought that with women. And that was my first marriage. And that was part of my journey. That's how I got into therapy, was sex addiction recovery. And so the therapist that I had, I believe, is probably one of the best sex addiction therapists in the United States. He's that good. And it was so so just it just opened my eyes like, oh, I am a boy and I need to become a man. And how do I do that? And so that's what therapy really caused me to do. It really shaped my life. And one of the things is with the reason why we push therapy so much in our book is because you're going to have conflict and issues, especially with the kids. Mm-hmm. And if you're not good with who you are, you'll go back to that boy, the boy reacting instead of the man reacting, the healed man reacting in life. And I see that. I saw that with Danny, the youngest one. It was tough. And that's, we talking to other couples that have a step family, usually the men are like, well, this one's a little brat and and I put her in her place. And I'm like, whoa, that isn't going to work. Mm-hmm. And so therapy will help you to have that patience, that patient endurance of, going, okay, if she doesn't tell me she loved me, that's okay. Because see, I'm okay with me and I'm okay and I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to continue to love Jeanette's kids like they're my own. And now when I call them, they're not my stepkids, they're my kids. Mm-hmm. They're not my stepkids, they're my kids. And so
what a powerful statement. That's so good.
Yeah.
And he was the best stepdad ever. Just how he loves my kids is amazing. And, Danny, when she got married, she gave him a gift. It was a wallet that said, you may not have given me the gift of life, but life gave me the gift of you.
Oh, girl, I'm going to cry. That's amazing.
And so think about, this is a kid that hated me.
Yeah.
Not just disliked me. He hated me. Yeah. And my kid, so her and Mariah, the next kid up, they're only a year apart. They went to the same high school, same middle school, same high school together. They didn't speak to each other for probably 2 years.
Oof. Wow.
They would walk by each other and not say a word.
And they would have friends that would come over and be like, "You're related?"
Right? We had no relationship outside of that. Yeah, they were hiding it. Yeah. Oh man. So how do you navigate that? Because girls, let's just be honest, they are covert in their warfare and they can be brutal to one another. So how do you bring your kids together and actually blend them?
So I think we never pushed them into a relationship with one another. But from the very beginning, we always had, even when we were dating, Paul would bring the girls over and we would have dinner together. And we always had family meals together, whether he was out of town traveling or he was home, because he did a fair amount of traveling when we got married and still does. But so, and then traveling on vacation, getting that time away. And it's funny because Mariah shares a story in the book about how she really, a couple different things. I think Mariah was really excited to have step siblings or siblings, And so she was very, very much looking forward to that, where Danny was just the opposite. She's like, I want nothing to do with you. I didn't ask for this. And so when we got married, my mom actually kept the kids and we went away for like 3 days. We went to Vail and Mariah gets in the car and Danny gets in the back seat with her. And she says, or no, Danny's in the car. Mariah gets in and she says, move over, sister.
Okay.
Danny says nothing. And then another time they were older. We were going to look at a college for Mariah in Seattle. And we were at the airport. And so the two girls, they were at home with us longer, obviously, because they were younger when we got married. And so we were at the airport and Mariah had some gum and Danny wanted a piece of it. And she's like, can I have a piece of that gum? And Mariah says, only if you tell me you love me.
Oh, wow. She went for it. Good for her.
Yeah, so Danny's like, I love you. And so she gives her the piece of gum. And, but that was like milestones. Like that was a huge thing because, so I think it's just being patient, allowing them the time to get to know each other on their own, and not forcing that relationship. Not, of course, in our house, like, I had, conversations about being respectful and being kind and, treating each other respectfully without forcing that relationship, And so, yeah, I think that was just a big part of just allowing them the space and the freedom to do it on their own. And then we would have game nights, family. We would always celebrate birthdays together as a family.
And we still do today.
Yeah.
And it's with 5 kids, 5 grandkids, and then we have spouses. So it's 15 people total, 16 people total.
Wow. I love that. Big family.
Total. And then we have everybody over here, and there's something every month. And we have people, and it is so cool where we've come from literally having, the youngest one, and even the boys, Jeanette's boys, Christian and Anthony, they, I connected really with Anthony. He's the middle child. I connected him really, right away. We connected. And it was really good. Christian, very standoffish, very like, ugh. And he was 18 at the time.
Yeah.
Now he's 30.
In college.
Now he's
35.
35 years old. So, and now we're like, the other day we were driving the truck and I was asking him about his marriage, asking him what's going on in his life. And, it's so cool because he can just, he feels like he can open up with me.
Yeah.
And they'll even say, now they're not, and this has been for many years. We're not, if you ask any of our kids how many brothers and sisters they have, they would say 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't, and it's my brother. He's my brother. He's not step brother. He's not my stepsister. She's not my stepsister.
Yeah,
they're just sibling. They're brothers, brothers and sisters. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But the thing is that the message we give to people is, you got to stay consistent. You got to continue to love them. And when they say things or do things where you go, oh, wow. And just, you don't lash out. You just, as I like to say, you don't just bite your tongue, you bite it off.
Well, and I think too, when there are situations that happen between kids, conflict or whatever, and as parents, they always tend to come to you and say, man, this is what's going on and this really irritates me or whatever. And you're kind of that sounding board for them to be able to share that. But then also, giving them feedback about, well, there's another side of the story. There's another piece. There's another person here who you're upset with, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about, why this may be going on, and trying to give them another perspective and not bashing, like if it's the 2 girls, Mariah and Danny, and we can talk about situations that have happened between them. And, kind of, I'm more of the sounding board where they'll both come to me and, talk about that, and not bashing the other one, but trying to help them understand why some of this stuff might be going on. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you know what it brings to mind too is that in marriage, just being parents, you guys have to be united anyways, right? Because kids always know who's going to be the easier parent to get, to manipulate. And in my home, I just happen to be the one where even my own husband hides like the snack drawer key or the passwords on the cell phones, because I'm always the sucker, right? They know they can take advantage of me. But with blended families, how much harder is it for you guys to make sure that you're unified when your biological child comes, or your biological comes to you, like, and they're fighting with one another? I mean, how do you guys make sure that you're unified as parents?
I think what I would say first is that we are on the same team. And I think we've communicated that to our kids, that we are on the same team. He's not my enemy and I'm not his. And so when there's conflict with one, and for example, when Danny was younger and there were issues with her and Paul and how she wouldn't even speak to him when he walked in the room, and he felt really disrespected when it came to that. And he would, instead of lashing out at her, he would come to me and he would say, hey, this really bothers me. And when she does this, and I don't know how to make it any better. And and I, as her mom, I had two choices. I could either get really defensive at him because he was kind of upset with her, or I could, be his teammate and be like, you're right, that's not right. And I will have a conversation with her about that. And so that's what I did. I would go to her and I said, listen, I'm going to give you permission not to like him. It's okay. Like, you don't have to like him. But what I'm going
That's
to tell
awesome.
you is that he cares about you and he doesn't want to take the place of your dad. He's just another adult in your life who can love you and care for you, and he will be there. He's not going anywhere. And she would get upset with me too. It's like, why do you always take his side? And I would say, because he's right. If he wasn't right, I would have something to say about that, but he is
That's
right.
good. That's a distinction, right? Helping your kid understand, I will validate the way that you feel, but if you are not right, I will always correct that. So it remains truthful so that there's justice on both sides. Wow. I love
Right.
that. That's such a great. And Paul mentioned this earlier too, about like just being secure in who you are as an adult and then being able to be unified together to come up with a solution. Wow. Such powerful words.
You really have to have that. We've met so many couples where, the guy feels, oh, I'm disrespected. As I mean, you as a therapist, this. Guys, it's about love and respect. We want love and respect. Everything else, it's okay. But love and respect, that's what we want. And going into a step family, you're not going to get that right away. You're not going to get it. You have to earn it. You have to earn it. And we earn that love and respect by being consistent, by being going to love them no matter what, going to love, and then treating our step kids as our own kids. We've met so many couples that have 2 Christmases. They have 2 everything, 2 birthdays, and they do separate family vacations with their own kids.
Paul, clarify this. You mean like the biological children separate even though the parents are married and they have separate holidays?
Yes.
Oh, holy cow. Yeah. Okay.
We've met multiple people because the kids, especially when, and you may know this, you may not know this, there's a divorce epidemic of people 50 and above. It's over 30% of divorces now are people 50 and above. In 1995, it was only 8%. So these people are getting divorced later in life and they think, oh, my kids are teenagers. They're teenagers to early 20s. They're going to be fine. They're great.
Yeah.
Oh, no. And then what happens is there's such conflict between the kids. Then the parents decide, they say, well, we'll just have 2 Christmases then.
Oh, so they accommodate it. Yep.
They accommodate it. Isn't that interesting? Instead of trying to blend it, instead of trying to blend them or being consistently, they just give up and say, okay, well, we'll just have 2, everything's separate. And it's very sad. I mean, it's really sad. And that's one of the reasons why we see, the divorce rate in second marriages is 60%. And the main reason, the number one reason why people they get divorced in a second marriage is conflict with children. It's number one.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, well, it is, right? It sets up a tension and then parents feel like they're divided because as we indicated, like if you're not unified in the way that you parent, like that will divide you ultimately overall.
Yeah. And if you think about, what's interesting about first marriages, women file for divorce the vast majority of the time. I think it's like 75% women file for divorce. In second marriages, it's the exact opposite. Men file for divorce. And the reason why they do is because they don't feel respected, they don't feel loved, and there's conflict with the children. So they just said, I'm not going to do this anymore, and they're out.
Yeah.
It's sad.
I think too, I was thinking about older kids and, Christian, he was 18 when we got married and Ashley was 16. And I do remember him talking about this in the book about how and Paul says he's pretty, I don't know what the word was that you used.
Level-headed, calm.
He wanted to watch. He was like watching what was happening. And he was watching how Paul would treat his sister and how he would treat his brother and how he treated me. And had Paul not been the way he was, I'm sure that would have created issues too for him and Christian. where Christian just sat back and kind of watched what was going on, and it came to a level of really respecting Paul because of how he cared and loved for everybody. He really cares and loves for everybody and equally, And so I think, and when Paul talked about respect, it is earned. You don't just, we assume as adults that kids will automatically respect us. Well, they should.
I mean, we want them to, right? But the reality is most kids don't. It has to be earned. You're right. Yeah.
And so it's your actions and your words matter, and how you treat one another and how you treat them. And we chose in the beginning that we did not discipline each other's children either.
Okay, and that's good to know.
Yeah, because I think Paul's girls would have been okay with it with me, but I know that Danny or Anthony probably would not have taken to that very well. Sure, especially given the circumstances and how Danny reacted in the first place. She would not, that would not have gone over well. Yeah. And, and it's hard because like when you blend your family, you have kids coming from a different, like they parented differently than I did,
Right.
And so what if I were to start parenting his kids, like that's something completely different than how I parented mine. So, so that's just,
and those are conversations to have, right? On the front end, it is so important that both parties are on the same page and how important those conversations need to be had. And that probably goes to your point of just saying, take your time. Be patient, be considerate that people are two separate families are now coming from different experiences and they're going to be together blended. Well, it brings with it, and more than rainbows and butterflies, let me tell you, it's going to be a difficult road in some ways. So.
Very true.
Yeah. It's so true. There was a blended family conference that Jeanette and I spoke at, and we went to a couple months ago, and it was very interesting because one of the things you hear from blended families is they feel alone. They feel isolated. They feel like they're the only ones out there. The blend, but statistically, that's not not the truth. The truth is there are 100 million people in the U.S. with a step relationship. That's 1/3 of the country. 1/3. But yet, almost every person, when you say every person that we've talked to, all thinks they're on their own. We did. We thought we were like, okay, well, there's no help for this. We'll just figure it out.
We just kind of wung it, like, but it's good that we did the whole therapy thing, that we kind of walked that road before, and we weren't train wrecks before we got to getting married. And
that's a bonus. Yeah, that helps.
And so it helped us to navigate a healthy relationship, even though it was, it was difficult, but I think having a healthy perspective of how you handle conflict and how you're going to deal with kids not liking you and that sort of thing.
We really see a lot of couples get together because, they want to be in a relationship for various reasons, but so many people, they want to be happy and they want to be fulfilled, and they feel that a man or a woman will fulfill them, and that's not the case. It's just not. And that's why going in healthy is so important. And that's why we stress therapy. So because you have to work on the stuff in your life, because if you just go into another relationship with the same issues you had before in your first relationship, it's going to happen in your next relationship. It's just
that's right.
That's the way it's.
And that's when you have that conversation of what's the common denominator here? Because I'm pretty sure it's not your ex, and it's pretty sure it's not your present. You are the common denominator. Right. You got to work on that.
There you go.
It's so true. It's so true.
Well, guys, I've so appreciated this conversation. The reason why we have these conversations is to encourage people, to tell them they're not alone in this. And so I would love for them to know how they can find your information. How can they reach you? Where can they find this book of yours?
So this is our book, and we are on Amazon. We also have social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook,
all the things.
under Blended
blended_book. And then our website is blendedbook.org.
Yeah.
Is our website. So you can go on there and it's pretty exciting. And thanks for reaching out to us and,
allowing us to be on
and talk to you. Because it really is, we just want to help. We really see that the goal of this is to really help people, because people that are in blended families just feel like they are on an island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is not our desire at all, to make the fellow believers, well, across the board. It doesn't even have to be believers, just people of humanity, to know that they are known, they are seen, and we want to love and support them. And that's where I love how God uses our testimonies. So it's not like you entered your first marriage and thought this was going to work, and then I'm going to remarry again, it's going to be perfect. No one does that. And so in that destruction of that first marriage has created then not only healthy people, but now a healthy second marriage. And so thanks for sharing your testimony here today. I know people are really going to benefit from that. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Paul and Jeanette. Again, I come from a blended family. I have experiences as an adolescent. My parents divorced when I was a teenager, and then my mom remarried pretty quickly after that. And her goal was, of course, to provide more stability for my brother and I. But in the rapid choice of remarrying, they didn't have some of the conversations that Paul and Jeanette referred to that are necessary in order to have a healthy transition into a blended family. And so some of my takeaways today, I hope, first off, that if you're navigating this season of life, if you've maybe have entered a divorce season, or that you're contemplating remarrying and you have kids, like, you're not alone. Paul and Jeanette talked about how it can feel so isolating, as if you're the only one navigating this, the only one dealing with this. You are not, and I want you to know that there are people out there who can share stories who have already been through it. Paul and Jeanette talked about being married for decades and how now they're using their story, hopefully, to bring you encouragement, as well as some tools that you can implement so that you can transition a little more smoothly into this new blended life. So some of the takeaways that I have is, first, don't force relationships. So if you're already navigating the dating life and you're looking into getting married to this partner of yours, and they both have kids, you and your partner both have kids, don't force the relationships to happen. That goes for both children to children, and it goes to the step parent to the child. I know oftentimes we have in our mind, and I know you maybe do this too, it's like where we think everything is just going to fit together because as adults, we're fully in love and love conquers all. Yeah, well, that's not always the case in the real world. And so sometimes that ability to take our time to have those hard conversations and to be patient with our kids and their relationship with other adults, that can be foundational to creating health in your new marriage with your new partner and your new family. Another highlight that I love that Paul and Jeanette focused on was building experiences. I know from team building to coworkers to youth group and retreats, we're always built on experiences. So they go camping, or they go on vacations, or they have game nights. It can be even simple as just going out and having a picnic outside the home. When you have experiences, that bonds people together because they're having a similar experience in an environment that builds funny stories, that has conversation that can come out later. And it also allows you the opportunity to learn more about the other people that you're with. Of course, when we're talking about kids, it might seem like they hate every second. I mean, if you have a teenager, you can already know what that experience is like because they always give you the side eye. But I'm here to tell you, and as Paul and Jeanette's testimony imply, that building those opportunities or creating those opportunities of spending time one-on-one together as a family unit actually builds bonds with one another. And that's ultimately what we want in a family. We want each other to bond, to feel like they're part of a team, that they're in this together. And it might be difficult in the beginning, but keep pushing through, because I promise the harvest is going to be sweet and the fruit will be bountiful. So the two things that I'm walking away from today is have common experiences, go out and do something fun with together and build that bonding experience. And my final takeaway, we talked a little bit about therapy. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a therapist, friends. I am saying this because I see the value in finding health in yourself first. Too often, people, when they enter in a relationship, it is with the goal of finding contentment with themselves, that they'll finally be happy because they have a partner to do life with. Yes, we are designed for companionship. However, that person will not complete you. The only thing that can complete you is God, your creator. So when we put that expectation on our relationships, then of course, when we come together, there's going to be the tension because they will never fulfill you in the way that only God can. So going to counseling can actually be super beneficial for yourself, but also your family, the way that you parent, the way that you partner with your spouse. Learning your stuff and finding contentment in who you are is going to be super helpful then in developing healthy relationships across the board. I enjoyed this conversation with Paul and Jeanette. Again, you can check out their information, their book, Blended. Give it to a friend. Maybe you know someone that's going through this season and this could be really helpful for them. Again, if you have any feedback or guests that you might want to see on the show, please hit me up at paigeclingenpeel@gmail.com. And of course, we always have exciting interviews that are coming up here soon, so be sure to tune in again next time for another episode of Embracing Your Season.